Hello, EduMagicians. Welcome to the EduMagic podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fessich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of EduMagic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
Hi, I'm Kim Polishuk.
And I'm Jen Giffen from
Shoots and Giff, the podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network,
just like the show you're listening to right now.
Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others.
Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, EduMagicians, and welcome back to another episode of the EduMagic podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Fessich, and today I have an amazing guest. If you're a new teacher, you're going to want to turn up the volume and save this episode because you're going to want to come back to it often. I have Shanimarie who's going to be sharing about classroom management. Yeah, that's right, classroom management. I know it has been a long time since I've done an episode about classroom management, but she is going to be sharing tips and tricks to help you out, new teacher, when it comes to classroom management strategies. Shanimarie, welcome to the episode.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Excited to have you on because this is definitely a area in which some new teachers struggle with is classroom management. And it's so big, right? This is such a big topic area. We're going to break it down for you today. Before we get started, can you please share a little bit about your teaching story? What brought you into education? What are you currently doing? What have you been doing in the field of education?
Yeah, so I've been in education for a long time now. This is my 15th year.
All right, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Right now, I'm currently in the classroom as a first grade teacher, but I've done many roles before that. I've been a curriculum person, I've been a supervisor, I've done a lot of, so I see all the different areas in education. So I can definitely relate to teachers who are new to classroom management. And a story about me teaching, funnily enough, when I was in high school, my history teacher said to me, "Oh, you should be a teacher. You should go into teaching." And I said to myself, no, I said to him, "No, I'm not going into teaching. They don't pay teachers enough money."
You're right.
And here I am many years later. I'm a teacher because I love it so much. It's a calling for me. I love it when students are learning and growing, something I'm very passionate about. So that's just a little bit about how I got into teaching. Actually, and my undergrad is not an education degree. I have a business degree, and then I switched to actual education. So my master's is in elementary education. Yeah, that's my story. I absolutely love it. And I'm so excited to share my tips and all I know about classroom management for your audience today.
Awesome. And you also have a podcast too. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, I have a podcast. Thank you for reminding me.
Yay, no problem. That's what I'm here for.
Yes, I have a podcast called the Teachers Impact Podcast. And what we do at that podcast is to help teachers to master their craft, use their voice, and to enhance student learning. And I think it's very important for teachers to be able to share their stories, to use their voice, because as teachers, sometimes we get afraid, we get nervous, but our voices are important because we're the ones in the classroom doing the work. And we have to be able to articulate ourselves, share our stories, no matter how painful. So we share a lot of the joyful stories with the kids, but we also need the painful side of it because there needs to be a balance, right? So that change can happen. Yeah, so if you want to go and check it out, feel free to. It's on all the podcast platform, and it's called The Teacher's Impact.
I love that title. My colleague uses that, be a teacher of impact in all that you do. And so that title really resonates with me as an educator. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, so let's break it down. We're going to start with the basics. What is classroom management? What is it? If you could define it, what would it be?
So to me, classroom management, it's a few different things. It's not just managing student behavior. That's part of it. I feel like it's many different parts to it. So it's managing student behavior. It's making sure that making sure that the environment that the students are in is safe for learning, making sure that students are socially, emotionally ready to learn, and also just managing the physical environment of the classroom. So it's like 4 different parts of it that need to be put in place. And a lot of people say, oh, building relationships with students, that's the most important part. Yes, it is important, but it's not the only part of it. And you have to address all sides of it to really be effective. The physical environment, the social emotional side of it with the students, managing the actual student behavior when the kids are not doing what they're supposed to do. And the last one I said, what did I? Yeah, so those are just some of the parts the parts of it that I feel like are very important.
I'm so glad you broke apart classroom management and student behavior, because I think oftentimes classroom management and student behavior can is synonymous for new teachers. Like that's what classroom management is. It's managing my student behavior. But no, it's so much more. Like you said, the physical layout of the classroom, the social emotional well-being of your students. And thank you so much, Shanimarie, for talking about, yes, relationship building with students is important, but it's not the only thing you need to do as a new teacher. Thank you for saying that. That's so important.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I forget one more thing I wanted to add was
Sure.
the parental side of it, right? Right? A
Mm,
lot of times it parents are the child's first teacher, and they instill in children those behaviors, whether good or bad, and they come to the classroom with those types of behaviors, good, bad, whatever they've learned at home. And sometimes part of classroom management is teaching teaching children those social skills that they may have learned, or they have learned or haven't learned. So that's another part of it when thinking about how to deal with parents when students haven't learned certain social skills. They don't know how, basic things that you expect them to know, but they don't know. And it's something that you're going to need to address as a new teacher.
absolutely. Working with families is definitely an area that could help support in classroom management, and then also building that relationship with the families as well. First thing as a new teacher. So
Yeah.
let's talk about some procedures and routines that we should have down for students. I don't know about you, Shana Marie, but I've been looking on Instagram and Facebook and all the places, and people are like, what about decor? What about themes? Yes, that's important, but I think we need to also go into our classroom with a solid plan for procedure and routine. Can you share about that?
Yeah. So, like I talked about before, one of the things that's really important is how you set up the physical environment, because that's going to determine how students move around the classroom, how they enter the classroom. So, what I like to do before I start the year is think about, okay, how am I going to set up this classroom to make sure that it's effective for learning and managing the students? So, for example, I'll think about, okay, how are my students going to enter the classroom? Because one of the things that can happen with classroom management, sometimes students will come into the classroom. It's a whole big show.
Mhm. Oh, look at me. I am coming into this class.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Different personalities. So one of the routines is, okay, this is how I need you to enter the classroom. It's going to be walking feet. You're not going to put on a big show. If you're coming into the classroom, you're coming quietly. Students are working, you're not disrupting anybody. So thinking about that's one routine procedure. But when you set up your classroom, you have to think about that. Okay, how am I going to set up my classroom so that my students can enter in the way that I'm going to teach them, in the routine that I'm going to teach them?
Hmm.
So that's one procedure that I think is really important. How another procedure is, how are students going to be interacting with you when you're during instruction? Okay, are you going to allow them to ask questions? So depending on the type of lesson that you're doing, are they going to ask questions? How are they going to be working with partners? How are they going to be interacting with you as the teacher? So thinking about independent work, thinking about direct instruction, thinking about small group instruction. As a teacher, what do you feel comfortable with when it comes to those routines and procedures? So I can say, okay, this is what works, but it may
Mhm.
not work for you. I can give you a
Right.
basic idea and I can say, okay, so for independent instruction, one of the things I like to say is, at this point in independent instruction, nobody's going to be talking. Do I do that all the time? No, but for certain lessons, it might be important
Mhm.
because I need to see how students can master that concept on their own. Whereas other times, I may say it's independent work, but you're still able to talk with your classmate, right? So
Mhm.
thinking about the different types of instruction, independent work, small group instruction, partner work, how are you going to set up that routine? What feels good to you as the teacher?
Right.
Yeah. Another one I would say that's really important is dismissal. A lot of people sometimes overlook this. At the end of the day, especially with young students, they're tired, they get, antsy, they're just
Mhm.
ready for the day to be complete. And it's normal, you know. So for your dismissal procedures, how is that going to look like? For example, with me, one of the things that I do, the kids know, like I'll have different helpers in my classroom and I'll say, okay, I need my folder helpers to pass out the folders. So once the folders start to get passed out, the kids know this is dismissal.
Yeah.
During dismissal, we know it's quiet time. You can still talk, but it's quiet time. Pass out the folders, put your folder in your book bag, get everything ready so that when we're lining up, everybody's ready to go. That's one there's dismissal procedure. The other one is
Yeah.
lining up.
Very good. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, lining up. So what I like to do is I'll give each kid a number so they can line up by their number, which eliminates a lot of the fighting, and I'll have a specific line leader for that. Um, so they'll know, okay, if I call your number 1, 2, 3, everybody's lining up in that order.
Yeah.
Sometimes I may switch it up because every kid wants to be the line leader. So
Of course. Of course.
yeah, I'll do that. And papers are a big routines for papers. How a student's going to hand in work. For me, what I'll do is I'll have my helpers. I have the two helpers for the week, so they'll know, okay, it's time to collect the papers, and they'll put them in the correct bins that they're supposed to go in. So those are just a few of the things I do that really help with routines and procedures. But the important thing is to make sure that you write down your routines and procedures before you start. You're gonna adjust them as you go, but just to write them down so you know, okay, these are the ones I'm gonna be focusing. These are the ones that I'm gonna be teaching, and these are the ones that I'm going to be reinforcing with my students over a period of time. And I just as a caveat, even though you might be teaching and reinforcing, you're still gonna have students that they just choose not to. Just being
Mhm. Mhm.
honest. So, but the important part is to make sure that you write your routines and procedures down, you go over them with your students, you teach them. It's almost like you're teaching a lesson, right? And you're
Yeah.
constantly reinforcing it for them. And when you see students that are not doing what they're supposed to do, that's another opportunity for you to reteach those routines and procedures.
I like how you gave us lots of different procedures from entering the classroom to dismissal, papers, independent work, lots of different procedures within there. But you also stated that it's okay if you need to reteach and reinforce these procedures. Throughout the year, there are breaks and things like that. So you may have to go back and revisit these procedures, and that's okay. So come up with a plan for your procedures and know that they can be adjusted for your students. You have to find something that works for you. I like how you said it, like it might work for me, it might not work for you. So you got to find
Yeah,
something that works best for you, the
yeah,
teacher.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
So you talked earlier, one of the components of classroom management is managing student behavior. Shanimarie, can we talk about the importance of going beyond that clip chart of behavior management that I think often a lot of new teachers use? Can we talk about going beyond that for student behavior tracking?
Yeah. So that it's funny. That's one of my mistakes when I first started teaching. Everything was
Yeah.
about that clip chart.
That clip chart gets us every time. It just looks so pretty, right? But
Yeah.
I saw on social media someone posted, my behavior should not be a decoration for your room. I was like, ooh, that's good.
Oh, that is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like I was saying before, is again, once you have your routines and your procedures down, part of is having an actual plan written down, right? And
Hmm.
I've done this myself when I first started teaching. So I even do it until this day. Like my plan says, this is what I'm going to do when a child misbehaves. This is what I'm going to do when a child is doing what they're supposed to do. Me personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with rewards and incentives.
Hmm.
However, I we need to move beyond the clip chart. But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to get at is, and I know social emotional is the big thing, the big, thing right now, but what I've learned is, and especially over this year being in the classroom, it's really a huge factor because and I say that because one of the things that I did this year, I did like an emotional check-in with my students. So when they would come in the morning, I'd say, okay, give me a 1 if you're sad, not okay, give me a 2 if you're just okay, give me a 3 if you're great, you feel
Hmm.
good, give me a 4 if you're super excited, everything is great, you're ready to go for the day. And I noticed the kids that sometimes I may have had issues with, they they came in the day like not feeling good. And when I didn't do like the emotional check-ins, I noticed that they they acted out a little bit more. But when I did
Oh,
the emotional check-ins, it's almost like the day went a little bit smoother because they were able to get those things off their chest.
yeah.
Um so that's one thing I can say. The other thing is that we sometimes take for granted that kids are still learning how to articulate themselves. And it's really hard for us as adults to really, I need to just step back and take a deep breath from the situation because I'm not okay because this child is having a tantrum, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I when I notice if a child is misbehaving or having a tantrum, because it could be a trigger for the teacher. Just,
Right.
you just have to step back and you don't have sometimes you don't have to leave the room because you may not have an aid and the circumstances in your situation, but just step back for a moment, take a deep breath and come back to it. And what I've noticed is when I've stepped back, the the student may not automatically calm down, but it brings it down to a level that doesn't escalate the situation. So I think when we talk about going beyond the clip chart, it's taking student behavior on like a case by case basis and having the patience to realize that you may need to take a step back as the teacher and the child may not be able to articulate what they're feeling at that moment. So one of the ways that they articulate, good or bad, is to have a tantrum, is to, be defiant in that moment. And so if you're a new teacher, that's difficult to do. It's gonna take time because sometimes even I've been in the classroom 15 years and sometimes you may take it personally when a child is
Yeah.
misbehaving, but you just learn you it's a skill that you learn over time. And so it's great to have a chart. It's great to have a chart because you can keep yourself accountable at the same time, but you have to take student misbehavior on a case by case basis. You have your general plan,
Yeah.
right? but you have to take into consideration this, those students and the circumstance at the moment.
Right.
And so, as a new teacher, that's difficult to do because you're juggling so many things and you're just like, you.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I think you stated that very well. Having a plan in place that's going to address student behavior on a case by case basis, being aware this is what I do when a student misbehaves. Like, think about what would misbehavior look like, and what would be the consequence, or what does the appropriate behavior look like, and what's that reward? How are you going to redirect students? How are you going to keep them on task? These are some things to be thinking about as a new teacher that goes into your classroom management part of student behavior, managing student behavior. And friends, I too made that mistake with the clip chart. So please don't make that clip chart mistake. We've been there. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my final question for you, Shanimarie, is what is your best tip for new teachers? It can be related to classroom management, it can be related to whatever. But what's your number one tip for new teachers?
Well, my number one tip for new teachers would be and this is, I would say, is to have a teacher friend that you can trust.
Ooh.
That has some experience, because as a new teacher, you're going to be trying a lot of new things and doing different things, and you need someone to bounce ideas off of. And they're called critical friends. That critical friend is going to, give you the encouragement, the motivation to say, you know what, I was there. Keep trying, keep going.
Yes,
This happens to everybody.
it does.
Yeah. Oh, that's the one last thing I want to say. For first year teachers, classroom management is a thing for everybody, and it goes on as your career, goes through the years. It's just a part of the profession. And no one is perfect with classroom management. And you
No
may see
way.
that teacher across the hall. Her kids are always perfect, always in line. And you're like, oh my goodness, how does she do that?
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, there have been times when that teacher has an issue with classroom management. It's just a part of the profession, but it's how you respond to it, how you deal with it, what is your plan, how are you going to, what steps are you going to take? So don't be too hard on yourself. Just do the best that you can. Have that critical friend that you can go to when you just feel like I can't, because that'll really help you to just keep going.
Oh, that's a great tip. I love that. Now, Shanimarie, where can my listeners get in touch with you? I know you have a classroom management freebie. You got to tell us all about that. You have a podcast, you have a website, you have social. Tell us all the places that we can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so I have a classroom management letter template. So it helps you with writing down your routines or procedures. I give you some examples of those. I also give you a template of how to speak with parents. So
Ooh, that's a good
that's
one.
my template that, you should definitely grab, because it's going to be helpful. Second, I'm on Instagram. It's at Teachers Impact Podcast. And we're also on Facebook, Teachers Impact. And we're also have a website, teachersimpact.net. So you can go there, you can grab the freebie.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for your time today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Oh, awesome. All right, friends, you might want to rewind this episode and listen to it again. There were so many tips dropped for classroom management, from what is classroom management to procedures and routines to cover, how to manage student behavior beyond the clip chart, and Shanimarie's number one tip for new teachers, which is to find a teacher friend. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, you have the Edu Magic within you.
have it, Edu-Magicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more Edu-Magic, check out sfessage.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram at sfessage. Until next time, you have the Edu-Magic within you.